What's going on, everybody? Adrian here. Welcome back to the channel and to the final episode of my MMO report card series covering World of Warcraft today, which is another game that I've played quite a lot of in 2018, and it's pretty significant for me too because 2018 is the year that I jumped into World of Warcraft finally. So I've had about 1 year with this game, and in this vid I'm just going to share my experiences and my thoughts about all the major patches that dropped and that I've participated in. And of course, World of Warcraft is a big topic for many, so I'm kind of curious to know if you thought World of Warcraft had a good year or not. So a brief background for those of you that are just joining the channel. You guys are new here. I jumped into World of Warcraft in December 2017 and spent about 2 months leveling my first character to the level cap for a new player review, and I'll link that in the top right of the screen so you guys can go watch that if you haven't. Then I took a break and came back for the pre-patch, spent another month there, and of course 2 months playing the Battle for Azeroth expansion. So let's start off with the first major patch, and then we'll just zoom into the highlights, especially about the points that I want to talk about. And for patch 7.3.5 that hit, world scaling was introduced, and this was a very interesting time to bring in world scaling features. I was still leveling a review character, and I just hit the Mists of Pandaria expansion when world scaling hit, and my initial thoughts were, yeah, this is great. Prior to 7.3.5, a lot of my early game experiences when it came to the pacing didn't really do much for me, because as soon as I get close to wrapping up a zone narrative, a zone story that's going to lead me through a cluster of dungeons, I've over-leveled the zone and I have to move on to the next one and the next one. That's pretty much how the early levels was for me. And when 7.3.5 hit, that really shaked things up, because now I was able to completely finish a zone and get the comparable XP that sort of rewards you for staying there and doing what you wanted to do. So I could level at my own pace. So from a new player perspective, world scaling does a lot to freshen up the gameplay experience, especially if you spend quite a bit of time in the early game wondering if you'll ever get to see a good chunk of a zone without having to make numerous alts. So I thought it was pretty positive, and I made a video about it, and of course not everybody agrees. Existing players that have had multiple alts and were going to make numerous more alts because of the upcoming heritage armor that was going to be released for some of these new races like the Void Elf and the Dark Iron Dwarves. Most players feel like 7.3.5 in the world scaling only adds more padding to existing mobs because now they take longer to kill, and it was a bit of a drag. So I can understand that perspective. I just felt that from a new player's point of view, world scaling was a positive move until I myself rolled a Void Elf and started going through the early zones again. And the positive is, well, I was able to finish a lot of the zone stories and enjoy the low zone thoroughly all the way up to the ending dungeon. I started to understand why players feel it was a bit of a slog, and that's accentuated by World of Warcraft's early game design, which, let's be honest, isn't really that great. Besides that, patch 7.3.5 also introduced a new battleground and personal loot for all dungeons, and a revamped Silithus, which was pretty awesome. So once I hit the level cap and finished the Legion expansion towards the end of February, I put out that new player review and took a break from World of Warcraft to pursue other games, and came back for the Battle for Azeroth pre-patch event. Now this one I was really excited for because I just leveled my first character to the level cap in World of Warcraft, and I missed the Legion expansion launch, so I had no idea what to expect for a World of Warcraft expansion launch. And this pre-patch was done in a way that garnered a lot of hype, and especially for me, a sort of semi-new player now, I got caught up in that euphoria of, oh my god, look at all these players, look at the faction pride for the Alliance, for the Horde, and the fires definitely have been stoked by the writing building up to this expansion. Sylvanas goes into warmongering mode and burns Teldrassil, so we get to go back to the zones and take part in a short series of narrative-driven quests with new stories and world quests. And at the time I thought this was pretty clever in terms of a marketing tool building up the hype for the expansion, but the individual content itself didn't really impress me because it was all world quests, and I'm still on the fence about world quests. I still can't decide if this is just boring, lazy, repetitive, or it's a half-decent content system that keeps players on that hamster wheel for the time being. It's the rewards that I was disappointed with the most, because doing some research, a lot of the gear sets that they give you are great catch-up mechanics for alts, but it's nowhere near rewarding as the Legion expansion pre-patch event was. With all the invasions, the gear itself is great, but the armor and weapon designs and skins, or transmogs as it's called in WoW, was reused its old stuff. So that was pretty disappointing. The pre-patch also introduced new systems that we've known about coming in this calendar year, which is War Mode for one. You can turn on and turn off PvP from your main capital cities and go out in the world and take part in open world PvP. You get more XP for it, and for those PvP heads, it makes unorganized or organized PvP Underworld part of your MMORPG experience in World of Warcraft. And this was used by everyone, including myself, when leveling up those new races in the future, as we all want to get more XP, right? In addition to heirloom gear, so that was the fastest way, just turn on war mode and go leveling. But there's a large portion of the player base that do go out and actually PvP. And during the BFA cycle, I've gone out with some other folks that you have seen here on the channel, folks like TomBombdahill, which I've done a bunch of world quests in war mode, and it's actually really fun if you're not getting griefed, but that's the name of the game. You turn that on, you should know what to expect. So I think war mode is a nice addition. Next up for the pre-patch, we got communities, which was also pretty decent. Prior to this, you're stuck in a guild and you can only have guild chat, but communities allows you to join sub-guilds really, and you can chat with everyone that you send an invite code to if you are the starter of that community. And I've used it myself, and all I've got is good things to say about it. More social options, another way to increase your social pool of players to pick from if you want to run group dungeons or PvP or just chat about WoW pets, whatever you want. Communities ended up being a great addition to World of Warcraft. And finally, the death of the artifact weapons. We say goodbye to our artifact weapons in Legion, which I've only had like 4 months to get used to. And because I hit the level cap at the tail end of Legion when the catch-up mechanic was rampant, I was able to enjoy that artifact system a lot. And I do like that idea because a lot of these weapons are sort of personalized and it has its own character. And to get them, you had unique class missions that really stood out in my time in Legion. I thought, wow, this is actually an awesome way to build up legendary weapons like these. And you do sort of get attached to them, especially with your visuals and your transmog, which luckily you were given the opportunity to bring forward and use on your next weapon, so that was pretty nice. And then after the pre-patch, we get to the Battle for Azeroth expansion. Lots of launch day hype. I was super excited. I couldn't sleep. I stayed up all night for the global launch and streamed the whole thing. This was my first World of Warcraft expansion. I've got a big smile on my face because I still remember that experience. It was awesome. So BFA, 2 new regions, Kultiras and Zandalar, plenty of new zones to explore, experience the story, and run new dungeons with. You've got new factions and reputation and campaigns to go through. We got new systems and features like the Azerite system to replace artifact weapons from Legion. We got island expeditions as a new form of content. We got warfronts as a new form of content. There's plenty to talk about with regards to Battle for Azeroth, and I've gone in depth in a separate video, and you can watch that again in the description box below. So I'm going to zoom in on some of the more controversial ones because this has largely taken the attention away from what BFA has done so well, in my opinion, and that is the core WoW offering as a theme park MMO, the dungeons, the raids, the questing, and the story. The 3 main suspects are warfronts, island expeditions, and Azerite equipment. So beginning with island expeditions, on paper it sounded great, right? Oh cool, you can play against the AI, which was pretty clever. You can play against other players from PvP, go out, grab as much Azerite as you can, and you'll stumble upon some treasures and some rewards. Well, at launch, we all did them numerous times to hit our weekly cap, and I personally felt it was underwhelming. There was nothing about island expeditions that screamed, you want to keep doing me because I'm going to be rewarding, and I think that's the theme for a lot of these controversial new systems. The reward factor versus the time factor that you put in didn't really add up. Warfronts, on the other hand, a lot of players took issue with the back and forth, the time gating, so you wait a few days or a week for one faction to get done with the world quests and the world bosses and whatever, while the other factions take part in the warfront itself. The selling point is a lot of the things that you do in a warfront is RTS based, so you go gather materials so that you can bring out some interesting offensive mechanics to help you push into the enemy space and take it for yourself. This wasn't anything PvP related, even though I thought that would have been a pretty decent system for PvP. I just think it's too clunky to put into practice. The first few times that I did it, I thought, yeah, this was pretty refreshing. It's nothing like a dungeon, it's nothing like a raid. It sort of feels like an open world event of some sort, but the fact that you had to wait a long time to get into one kind of makes you just forget about it. Like, do I want to go do this and wait for this, or I'll just keep running my dungeons and mythic pluses to get better gear because that's more fun and that's what we're used to. That's more rewarding for the time and effort we put in. That's the general feeling I got from both island expeditions and warfronts. As for the Azerite equipment itself, at the very early stages of the expansion, a lot of the new skills and Azerite traits that came with upgrading your armor, your headpiece, your shoulders, your chest, were sort of traits that I would not necessarily find beneficial for the class that I play, which was the Paladin. Playing in Ret on the open world, questing and leveling up to the cap, you'd mostly go for, DPS DPS enhancers and offensive-based skills. And throughout that cycle, it was an endless cycle of, yeah, I'm gonna hold on to this and wait until I'm at a higher level or something to unlock that other trait. And it just went on, and I kept destroying the previous one, I'd get a new one and destroy that once I got a new one to drop. And it only got stabilized once I was running mythic dungeons, where you had a constant stream of better gear that you could now decide, okay, do I want to keep this or not? Is that going to be good down the line? And while it did sort itself out, there still wasn't an option to have a vendor to buy what you want and buy what you need based on currency that you earn. And that's finally come to the game, of course, with patch 8.1, which we'll talk about later. But at the time, we didn't have that option. So it was pretty underwhelming, especially when you compare that system to the artifact weapons in Legion. The artifact weapons just felt more rewarding. You saw real progress with what you were doing and how that affected your DPS output and the visuals as well, because it's a weapon. Whereas with Azerite armor, it's very passive in the background. So overall, I felt, yep, underwhelming. Didn't really care for it. If I got a better one that offered better stuff, yeah, I just put it on and just didn't really care about it. Everything else though that came with Battle for Azeroth was something that I definitely thoroughly enjoyed. From the zone questing, the dungeons, especially the dungeons. I think World of Warcraft's theme park MMORPG group content has set the benchmark pretty high, and I absolutely loved doing them multiple times a day, multiple times a week, just running the same dungeons over and over. It was pretty fun. Different group compositions, different players. You had the speedrunners, you had the casuals, you had the in-between players. I played with all of them, hugging everything from normals all the way up to mythic. And I say again, that was the absolute best times I've had running dungeons, probably in any MMORPG. If only the rewards were the same though. From a story perspective, it was choppy in places because of the pre-patch event. Look, we build up to this big war between the Alliance and the Horde, Anduin and Sylvanas over Azerite, but it goes deeper than that. The fallout of Teldrassil. What happens then? Sylvanas' leadership. Yep, we know Sourfang's not happy. He's a prideful orc and he doesn't want to see the Horde go that way. A lot of people will call out it's a Garrosh 2.0. Sometimes I tend to agree because we just haven't seen how deep this plotline will go and what Blizzard has in store. So it's a little disjointed when you think about what we've seen in the pre-patch event versus what's happening in BFA, but it's an important story to tell from the Alliance side, reconciling the Alliance and the people of Kulturis, and seeing Jaina Proudmoore's arc was incredibly satisfying for me because this is one character that I'm very familiar with from the Warcraft lore. And on the Horde side, seeing them make new alliances with Zandalar, also pretty refreshing. And the design of both zones, again, thoroughly enjoyed it. So after BFA hit in December, we finally got the first update for the expansion, and that of course is 8.1 Tides of Vengeance. Now a lot of the things that I brought up earlier, Blizzard has tried to go in and kind of remedy that. So beginning with Azerite armor improvements. So yeah, Blizzard has put their hand up and said, okay, we're hearing the feedback, a lot of people don't like it, so here's what we're gonna do. 8.1 introduced a new currency from completing Mythic Plus dungeons, and you can now buy Azerite armor directly. This is what was asked for, and this is what they've delivered, so hey, thumbs up. It definitely rewards you if you've been doing the content a lot, so if you save enough, you can buy your BIS slot items directly from the vendor instead of relying on RNG, and that's always a good thing in an MMORPG. You have alternative ways to earn some gear. Now, the real big change that players want, especially for me too, is with regard to how Azerite armor powers up your character. Great, we have a better way to obtain them, but it's these individual traits and their viability with your playstyle is what I want to see get improved on in the next patch. And this is going to be a hard one because now they have to go and do this for all the other classes out there, right? So what else did 8.1 added? They've rebalanced classes, and I did not mention this in any of the past content drops so far in the vid because this was pretty significant that I wanted to say for now. Classes and combat this calendar year has gone through a lot of changes here and there. So with regards to combat, first and foremost, we had a bunch of skills that were put on the GCD, and the general feedback from a lot of people was combat felt a lot slower compared to WoW in the past. For me personally, as I was still new to World of Warcraft, the way I play, I can adapt to things pretty much easily, but I can understand how players that have been used to a combat system for so long, a drastic change where a lot of these skills are now in the GCD definitely hampers what they're used to, and therefore I can understand that backlash. So 8.1 has reverted a lot of that. The changes prior to BFA was definitely unpopular, definitely slowed down the pace of combat, and I guess in today's day and age for MMOs, that's just a big no-no. So like I said, that decision has been reversed. Elsewhere, 8.1 also nerfed experience requirements for every level. So remember what we talked about in 7.3.5 with world scaling. and how it takes longer to kill mobs now, which also has a trickle-down effect. So it takes longer to finish quests, it takes longer to finish a zone. For new players, that could be a positive. For existing players who want to level up alts maybe to get one of these heritage armors for the new races, this is a definite negative maybe. And what that did, especially for levels between 60 to 80, was it slowed everything down to a grindy slog. The requirements per level in terms of XP going from 61 all the way to 79 was pretty huge. So you'd definitely be spending a lot of time in Northrend or in the other expansion areas slogging it through, and as I was leveling my Void Elf Priest at the time, I definitely felt that. Kind of why I took a break. So 8.1 has nerfed those requirements, and the average reduction is about 25%, but can reach as high as 40% in some levels, especially in that 60 to 80 bracket. So players will feel like, okay, leveling is sort of faster a bit now. Is this a good change? Overall, I'd say, yeah, I think Blizzard kind of caved in to the general player base that don't have the time to level again and don't want to spend money on a max level boost, because why would you? You wouldn't get an heritage armor unlocked if you did that. So all in all, good change here. And rounding up 8.1 is of course the new features and content. So the narrative quests finally continue, and this time we do get some closure with what happened with the pre-patch event. So Malfurion and Tyrande, and on the Horde side, their follow-up with Sourfang. There's also new campaign stuff to do, and I'm making my way through that now. I was checking out the changes mostly, but from a content side, I trust Blizzard know what they're doing. So unless something really doesn't make sense or really doesn't add up, or it just feels totally disjointed from what we've been experiencing from the pre-patch to BFA and now Tides of Vengeance, then yeah, I'll report back in a week or so. But that's it. That's the major patches that drop in 2018 for World of Warcraft. A lot of them positive, a lot of them negative as well, especially with the feedback and the outcry from the player base, which is, compared to other MMOs, a lot more vocal when it comes to World of Warcraft, and that's totally expected because it is arguably the most popular MMORPG in the world today. So when you have a large following and a player base that isn't afraid to voice their opinions, then as a developer, you have to take that into consideration. So my question to you folks is, do you guys think that World of Warcraft had a good 2018, a mediocre one, or just a bad year overall? What are some of the reasons why you think that way, and what would you like to see improved in the future? For me personally, this was my first full year of World of Warcraft, my first year of completion. I'm happy that I finally got to play this game after getting numerous hammerings from everybody asking me to play the game, and I have, because it's what I do here on my channel now. I review MMORPGs, and I'm glad that I gave World of Warcraft a very in-depth look, because there's a reason why World of Warcraft has this longevity that no other MMORPG could pull off today, tomorrow, or in 5 years time. I don't think 2018 for me was an up and down. I think I was spoiled by the late part of Legion, and because of the way I play and the type of player that I am, whatever World of Warcraft does with its core content, and by that I mean, you know, the questing, the story, the dungeons, the raids, those are to me the best parts about World of Warcraft. Some of the new systems and features that they introduced, if they had launched BFA without them, I don't think players will complain too much. And I'm talking about Island Expeditions and Warfronts. If we traded those in for 10 more dungeons and maybe 2 more raids, I don't think people would be upset at all. Which begs the question, who asked for this stuff, Island Expeditions? Let's take Expeditions for example. It sort of thematically makes sense, right? Because Zandalar and Kultiras, we're in the middle of islands here, and one of the catalysts for the story is Azreck, which is now popping all over Azeroth on the surface. So from a narrative point of view, yeah, let's make some fun new content to explore these themes, but nobody sort of asked for that. If we could do that in a dungeon instead with a proper storyline, maybe that would be more fun. I don't know. So that's it from me. Hit the like button for more vids, and feel free to subscribe to the channel for more MMO content. Now again, if you are a World of Warcraft player, I really want to hear your thoughts on this. What do you guys think about World of Warcraft in 2018? Have the new content impressed you or not? Let's have a good discussion down below. Once again, I'm Adrian, and I thank you for watching. Hey, thanks for watching that video. Welcome to the dreaded end screen. If you want to watch more vids, you can click the cards at the bottom of the screen here and subscribe if you want to. Otherwise, guys, it's the end of the year. Have a great holiday season ahead. Enjoy your Christmas and New Year. I'll see you all when you get back. Take care.